Hey, all my Crimsonites, and welcome to the Crimson Cure channel, where we embrace our femininity, increase our womanly value, and celebrate our brothers. So join me on our feminine journey to learn, heal, and grow. We like to function off of emotion because we can manipulate, we can change that literally when we feel differently. Literally. Because an emotion does not need a logical explanation to exist. You ever been mad and you don't know why you mad? Because sometimes there's no rational explanation for that. You will not be able to say, this thing just happened and it made me mad. Not necessarily. That's why they call it you woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning, because no rational explanation for feeling a certain kind of way. Sometimes there can be something that preceded it, sometimes not. Sometimes you could get down and you don't know why you just got down, but there it is. So we don't like to buckle down on a fact if we feel differently about it. This confusion about what is a biology and what's a culture leads to the misunderstanding of the third part of this, which is the environment. We don't understand how environmentally how America works in the society we live in. We don't actually get it. Only a handful of us actually understand this. It's everything that surrounds individuals or groups and affects where they live and grow. The environment is the sum total of surroundings and conditions in which people experience life. It includes the physical place, like the chemicals, the soils, the climate, the living organisms. And the collective balance of all of these determine the survival or not of parts or all of the ecology. It also includes things like legalities and the institutions, housing, all of the various different institutions, legal institutions, the industries, the infrastructures, the transportation, the hospitals and businesses and bankings and schools and the governments and all of those things. All of that is included in the environment. So the environment is not only the physical environment, the trees and the weather and all of those things, the physical topography and geography, but also the structure of the society itself, the infrastructure of it, how it is ran. We don't actually get that either. We don't actually understand that either. Because we want to be confused, about biology and culture. So we remain confused about environment. To a certain degree, we don't want to know the inner workings of this society. We don't want to know it. There's a part of us that doesn't want to know this information. Because when we start talking about the technical part of how the system is really working, for some reason, we don't really like to get into that part. I think we're afraid collectively that if we understand the institution, we think we can't change it anymore, or we can't feel a certain way about it. As Black Americans, we know the system in and of itself, the institutions, the infrastructures, are inherently biased against us. But that's all we want to know. We don't want to know how it works. Because when we know how it works, or somebody explains to us how it actually works versus how we think it works, or rather how we were told it works, we think we can't feel a certain way about it anymore. It will, what I said before, it challenges our predetermined emotional position to it. In other words, we don't like to take our emotions out of something for the purpose of learning it and understanding it. We want to be upset about it. And maybe we got a right to be upset about it, but we do ourselves a disservice when we fail to understand it. One of the unpopular things that reaches to that point is when I speak about reparations. And again, many of us cannot separate the emotional part of reparations and the technical part of reparations. There are two different parts. It's the cultural part and the environmental part. And every time I talk about it, I recognize the cultural part. I recognize the emotional part. I recognize the justice or the injustice concerning it. Should Black American ADOS receive reparations from the country that enslaved its ancestors and then set up a system to perpetuate that bias? Yes, they should. Because it would be the right thing to do. It would at least be an attempt to address the injustice. It may not cover everything, but it's an attempt to do so. So I recognize the emotional and the cultural part of that. We know that. But what do we also know? We also know that in order to actually give what would be a reparation, not just money, because see, our ancestors was not working, would not have been paid in fiat currency. That's why I'm not impressed by no specific number of check, because that money is not backed by anything. That money doesn't mean anything. The inflation tell you that. The inflation coupled with the recession that we live in tells you that the dollar doesn't have anything because they print the money up. See, our ancestors would have been paid during that time with money that was backed by a resource, i.e. gold and silver. So that money actually would have been worth more. I would be more interested in the actual 40 acres and proverbial mule. Because screw the check. The land is the wealth. That's how they make their wealth, off the land.